to a special edition of the Darden Admissions Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. In this episode of the podcast, we return to our ongoing Faculty Spotlight series, a series we call Office Hours, for a conversation with Yael Grushka-Kane and Raj Venkatesan, academic directors for the LaCross AI Institute here at the Darden School of Business. If you are interested in what is happening around AI at Darden, this episode is essential listening. As always, if this conversation is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Yael Grushka-Kane and Raj Venkatesan. All right, welcome everyone to our latest installment of our ongoing Faculty Spotlight series, a series we call Office Hours. I'm Brett Twitty. I have the good fortune of hosting these conversations. Perhaps you joined us just last week for our conversation with Rodney Sullivan and Caitlin Boyer, all about the Mayo Center for Asset Management. We today are joined by two people who probably don't need an introduction, Yael Grushka-Kane and Raj Venkatesan. They are academic directors for the AI initiative here at the Darden School of Business. Yael leads the professional degree program. She's a senior associate dean for professional degree programs here at the Darden School. Raj, I've gotten to know not only in his role as a faculty member and teaching marketing classes here at Darden, but he's also one of the academic directors for the MSBA program here at Darden, which is actually a partner program between Darden and the McIntire School of Commerce. So two incredible people. I think you're really going to enjoy hearing from them. And the inspiration for this conversation, I'll just offer this, is we've gotten so many questions from prospective students about artificial intelligence and how is it coming into the Darden curriculum? What's happening at Darden about AI? And who better to talk with about this very subject than the academic directors for the AI initiative here at Darden? I'll note as we go through this conversation, just a little bit of an overview. We're going to ask Yael and Raj to tell us a little bit more about themselves, and then we're going to get right into the conversation about artificial intelligence. I know that's what you're here for. If you do have questions as we go through this conversation, please ask via the Q&A. That's the best way to ask your question. And I'll keep an eye on the Q&A. I'm sure we'll get more questions that we can actually get to in this session. And I have some questions here as well for the conversation, but we'll try to fold in a few questions from the audience as we go. So Yael, can I come to you first? Tell us a little bit more about you.
Okay, there again, where do I start and how do I contain it so that we still have time to talk about AI? I've been at Darden since 2009, and I have taught decision analysis for all of our students in the various formats. I've taught data science. I teach project management these days, and a course that I probably will tell you a little bit more about later. I've experimented, or I've joined one of my lead colleagues teaching coding with GPT this year. So I dabble a little bit in my own research and my teaching in AI, and I'm excited to be here and chat with you about this. So thank you for organizing this session.
Yeah, thanks, Yael. Raj?
Yeah, so I'm Raj Venkatesan. I teach marketing here. I've been in Darden since 2006. And I'm a computer engineer by training and also a PhD in marketing. And so my research work is on the intersection of technology and marketing. And I've been seeing the evolution of how technology has affected marketing for the last 20 plus years. And it's been an exciting journey that has led to now AI in marketing. And so the classes I teach the marketing core course and digital marketing analytics, and a new course that we can talk more about on AI in marketing.
All right. Well, let's start with kind of more of a sort of fundamental question about your interest in artificial intelligence. So, Raj, what got you interested in AI generally?
AI generally is, I think, I'll have to go back to my undergrad days in my project, and I was in AI at that time, and it was during the AI winter. And it really was intriguing to see, at that time it was still expert systems and not what we know as AI now. But there were a few things that were coming up, and that got really intrigued for me. And it just stayed with me since then, because the whole idea of how can you program something to be like a human. And one of the most, and also for me, the most fascinating thing is that what's difficult in a computer to create is what a baby can do when it's born, is recognize mom and dad, and how that is so difficult to actually code and get a computer to do that. And that was really my fascination as to how the human brain is so complex. And if we can actually get even a few, make it computers, reflect that even a little bit, it would be such a great. It was just too cool for me to think about it that way, and that's kind of what stayed with me, and that's why I have always followed this. And also in marketing, it was very intriguing to see how that actually marketing is this manifestation of and the combination of technology and psychology. And it really gives technology a purpose. And that's kind of what got me intrigued and gets me going every day.
Thank you, Raj. Yael, how about you? What got you interested in AI?
So first, I love the fact that I don't know that I've ever heard Raj explain this from his perspective. So I love getting to know even Raj, who I work so closely with after all these years. Similar to Raj, my interest started back in my undergraduate days. So I studied industrial engineering. And management. And at the time, there was a lot of interest in information systems. This was, I'm going to date myself, just pre-2K. So before there was a lot of investments in IT and information systems because of the Y2K concerns that the world was going to come to an end when the date turned to 00. And I studied a lot of coding at the time and a lot of what at the time was considered AI modeling. So Lisp, did you study Lisp, Raj? I don't know. So if, again, we date ourselves here to kind of more rule-based approach. And I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed all of my more coding and CS style courses. And then a lot of my recent work since then in my grad school and beyond has been on forecasting and forecast aggregation. And because I'm an operations person in my background, operations research and management science, for me, AI is an opportunity to really continue and push how we leverage data, how we use systems and technology, and how we really think about not only the work that we want to do and need to do, but how do we get better and how do we get different systems to help us do it smarter and different. And so it's just kind of the next wave, I would say, of the modernization of some of these tools. That's my perspective, at least. And so it's exciting to see the world pay attention and care. It's exciting to see that people finally realize that data is not, a dirty word, but something that is really important to be thoughtful about, and that it has huge implications for how we think about the future of our jobs and our day-to-day lives. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you both. For those of you who are just kind of getting up to speed on what's happening at Darden around artificial intelligence, pretty significant gift given recently by an alum to start the LaCross Institute for Ethical Artificial Intelligence here. Overall, it's a $101 million gift, $50 million of it earmarked for the creation of this new Center for Excellence focused on ethical artificial intelligence. Yael, how did you get involved? Obviously, you got a real passion for AI, but how did you get involved? What led you to get involved with the LaCross Institute?
Well, so first, before Dave and Kathy's generous gift, I'll give Raj actually a lot of credit. We've been working closely with our School of Data Science here at UVA. We're part of a larger university, as many folks know. University of Virginia is one of the first schools that has a School of Data Science. And even before that, the data science was an institute. So we've been kind of in the conversations at a university level from the start, recognizing that business and AI in business, or the evolution of data science and now AI in business has been really bubbling up for the last decade or so, and excited to see the business school play a role because it opens up questions related to, first, what are companies working on, what are technologies that are being developed, and our students, our graduates, go and serve different leadership roles in those organizations, but also how do we think about the way the businesses are run, whether tech businesses or not. They've been evolving, and we've been seeing this impact from first data science and now AI in a real and meaningful way. And so both in my research and in my teaching, and even in the leadership roles that I've served in, it's always been important for the business mindset and the business leaders to have a seat at the table in all of these discussions. And so when Dave, LaCross, and Kathy have came to Scott, our dean, and expressed interest and fascination. Dave's always been an algorithms guy. He's been on top of, the importance of methods and algorithms from the get-go, and businesses that rely on those algorithms. And so when he started to show interest, it was very exciting. And I was kind of a natural member of a bunch of us. There's a group of us faculty that have been in deep conversations. And so it felt like the right thing to do is to step up and accept this leadership opportunity. I also have a role at the provost office. So I'm the provost advisor on AI. And so I help coordinate some of the activity at the UVA level. So we talk a lot about our role as business leaders, as translators. So translating between the tech and the business and in this case, the humanitarian, the college and the med school and all the other aspects in which we see AI at the UVA level. And so it's nice to have both hats, leading the LaCross and being able to bring some of that and coordinating with UVA at large.
Thank you, Yael. Raj, Yael mentioned obviously you've been very involved with the School of Data Science for a while. What got you interested in serving as an academic director for the LaCross Institute?
The story is pretty similar, right? So we've also, as we've worked with the data science school, we started the dual degree program with them, and then we've been, and also I led the collaboratory with them. It's a lab that was here, which was a connection between data science, School of Data Science, and Darden. And within Darden, we had kind of make like a working group, which is what the AI initiative was, because the idea was that this is going to be a big shift in AI is going to be a big shift in business. And if we look around, there were faculty doing research in AI across all the areas. So we wanted to bring in like this multidisciplinary stakeholder perspective and bring all the faculty together to have a forum just to exchange ideas and also to show how Darden is, leading the way in AI and figuring out how AI will change business. So we had that working group, and so there were two entities that were already in place. The AI initiative within Darden and the collaboratory, which was a connection with the data science school. And I think these were definitely things that were happening in the school that, we were involved with. And as Dave and Kathy LaCross came and talked to the dean, these were natural fits that could be supercharged by their generous donation. And we can now do several activities and really start thinking much bigger than what we were at that stage.
Well, let's talk just a little bit more about the Institute and its focus. It's ethical artificial intelligence. Raj, what does that mean to you? How do you think about the focus of the Institute?
So the Institute is ethical AI in business. So I think the business part is also very important, is that what we're trying to do here is to understand, like, there are technologies and there are algorithms that are new innovations that are coming, but how does it affect business leaders? I think that is a big part of our agenda, and also in a responsible way, because whenever there is a technology, especially with AI, which can, to a large extent, reason too, there is also a question on using it responsibly. And that fits with Darden's mission around building responsible leaders. And so that's the main goal, is to understand you can use AI. And I always say let's assume innocence and say nobody wants to, misuse it. But what also happens is a lot of times when we optimize short-term decisions, we can ignore the long-term consequences and also long-term negative externalities of our decisions. And that's where the challenges a lot of times really happen, is decisions made today for a small group may have bigger consequences later on. And how do we understand that? And how do we avoid those? And when we make decisions, how do we take a more holistic picture that is benefiting all stakeholders and is providing welfare to business and society. I think that would be the main goal of how we see this, the charge of the institute.
Yeah, sort of building on that, what do you see as Darden's differentiator in this artificial intelligence conversation?
Yeah, well, a couple of things that I'll connect to some of Raja's points. So first, as you both mentioned, this focus on ethical AI. There's a lot of conversation around ethical and explainable AI. These are terms that you sometimes hear. Responsible AI. The Darden School has always been in the business of educating responsible leaders. Not to say that we're the only business school that does, but we definitely take it to heart, and it's very critical to how we view our mission. We've also been a school that's focused on the enterprise perspective. There's many different aspects. If folks are just, learning about Darden, we're all business administration professors. We're not siloed. We don't really have siloed departments, but we think about things from a very multidisciplinary perspective, and ethics and stakeholders is always a critical part of that. So, it's not just on some subset of leaders to be thinking ethically and nobody else is included in that. No, it's on all of our shoulders to make these types of ethical decisions. And alongside with that, the way that we teach and the way that we think about our research, it's very decision-oriented, action-oriented. So we ask our students from the first 2 minutes of class, so most classes, what do you recommend? What is your decision? What would you put forward? And so that decision orientation, that ethical interdisciplinary perspective, that it is all of our collective responsibility to be thinking about those ethical choices at every step of the way. It's really kind of in the DNA of what we do here at Darden and how we would educate and have been educating leaders for decades. And so it felt very appropriate. Dave LaCross studied here at Darden in the 70s, and it was there then, right? He felt it. This was the emphasis that he felt, that some of the legacy that he inherited from his time here. As many other alums, if you talk to them, they'll share that that's how they felt. That's what they felt they got from our education and their experience here. And us as faculty, the work that we do, the research that we do is inspired by some of that as well. And so that unique aspect of focusing on having an interdisciplinary perspective, thinking about the business from multiple viewpoints and different stakeholders' perspective, and remembering that at every single moment in time, you have to be making ethical choices and that you have to understand the implications is really, really important to us. And it's aligned with the values of the school. We may talk about this later, Brett, but we just had a conference that Raj chaired that was focused on what we call the value chain of ethical AI. And what was so fascinating there is that our different keynote speakers, some from industry, some from academia, thought about the value chain slightly differently. But in all cases, you have multiple places where ethical decision-making is required. And at each step, if you're not thoughtful, you can destroy the entire value in the value chain. So it was just really fascinating to think about it that way. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, let's stick with the conference for a second. And then I have a couple questions I want to pull out of the Q&A here, sort of get your general take on
audience.
AI just generally, and why this time might be different than, say, earlier times when AI sort of bubbled up in the conversation. So Raj, how did you pick the focus how did you all collectively pick the focus for this year's conference around the value chain of AI?
That was interesting. So what we wanted it to be inclusive of and representative of what Darden is doing research in. So we had this great idea. I'm saying this tongue in cheek because we got a few faculty together and asked them to brainstorm and understand what they were doing research in. And that's always fun because it was all over the place, right? Which is great because faculty do research in what they're interested in. And the beauty of Darden is you have people with different interests, and we had a breadth of ideas. But what really pulled everything together that we thought that people were interested in was this idea about how the whole AI process works. So we think about this as a supply chain of how there is the raw material, which is data and infrastructure, and there were faculty working on that. How do data markets get created? What data goes into AI, and how energy infrastructure is necessary for the data centers to what is the then there were faculty who were working on the models, the algorithms, and how to improve algorithms or explainability of those algorithms. There were faculty working on the next stage, which was on products. What are AI products, and how can AI help workplace productivity? Working with AI, how does AI help consumers? How do you personalize? My own work is on how do you personalize products and marketing for using AI. And there were folks working on the ethical implications of this, folks working on bias that humans have when they work with machines. And so if you think about like the stream in which I laid it out there, it starts from the raw materials to in the final product to interacting with AI and the ecosystem within which it exists. That's how we saw this as, okay, if we can lay it out in this term of supply chain, and that is kind of how AI gets, like, there are different stages of AI as an industry, right? And the idea of value chain is it's not a supply chain, but each stage is creating value in the economy, right? Each stage has players in there that are creating this new economy and understanding that. So that's why we termed it the value chain of AI. And it really brings together all the different aspects of research that faculty in Darden are engaged in, and also the breadth of courses and interests that we have here that will be reflected in the programs as well.
And there's a question about that in the chat, Brett, or in the Q&A. I wonder if it's a good time to talk about how the Institute affects the school, but I don't want to change the sequence of the questions that you want to ask us.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about it. I mean, how you want to take that question?
Yeah, so there's a question here that I saw in the Q&A related to how how the MBAs engage with the Institute. Like, how is the Institute affecting the students? Many folks online are students or interested in becoming students here at Darden. And so there are many different ways in which our students get involved and are affected by the existence of the Institute, which we're excited about. Like anything at Darden, our activities typically have three dimensions. We talk, faculty activity and thought leadership, working with our students, programming and training our students for what they are interested in, and working with the world of practice. So working with companies and partnering with organizations to change or to have a seat at the table when it comes to the world of practice. And so the Institute activity, as it pertains to our students, they get involved in a lot of those steps along the way. So for instance, in our conference, which was held in December, that we've been talking about, students were invited to join. Of course, they were in the audience, and many did, but many got really much more involved. They co-led some sessions, and they helped with some of our brainstorming sessions. They helped us with identifying some of our agenda and our main kind of calls to action moving forward. And so we involved them, and they joined us in the organization of the conference, but also in and being active participants. Some students are already leading the charge in terms of their own work. They either worked in AI, or they're hoping to work in AI, or they just are really interested in it. And so they're helping us work on projects and on cases. Some of them are collaborating on some research with our faculty. This is done more on an individual basis, but they're definitely those leaders. Our students have recently established a new club, which is an AI club, and we are working with the club on a joint set of activities as well. And in the spring, there's also a conference that is more focused on the student side of AI, which is what is really interesting to students. Some students are interested in some of the thought leadership, but some are more interested more proactively on the types of jobs and the roles that they have to play and what kind of training do they have to acquire along the way. And so we're trying to find synergies with the Institute activity and weave in not only faculty or practice-related activities, but definitely many student-related activities. the Institute helps support some of the work that goes into writing cases and developing content for our classes, and we'll talk about the curricular innovation probably in a few minutes as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I want to ask a couple questions that we've gotten from the Q&A, just kind of about what's happening with AI just generally now, right? It's everywhere in the news. I mean, there's just a new administration just announced a $100 billion investment in Stargate around AI. So, Raj, you mentioned you got originally involved with AI during the AI winter. Like, why is it so different now? Why does it seem to have so much traction? What makes now different than, say, 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
Yes. So when the AI winter, I think there was a shift in the way we approached AI. During the early stages, we approached AI as like, let's create a set of rules that will say how something is, right? So if you want to define a car, then we will say it has four wheels and it has a combustion engine and four doors. But then there are two-door cars, then there are electric vehicles. And then if with all these exceptions, we will start creating new rules. But then it always breaks down because there are exceptions all the time. And so what the new ideas came in where they changed the thinking from rules to data and let the machine learn from the data. So the neural networks, deep learning networks were always there. But the challenge was how do you train enough and big enough neural networks to be then scalable at like all levels, right? So that's where the data and the new digital economy actually is a precursor to how AI got built, right? So one of the earlier stories is around like Google Images is one of the earliest advances of AI. We think of OpenAI now, but it was Google Images with Google image recognition. That was a big advancement at that time. And in fact, like Jeff Hinton, who got the Nobel Prize, was a precursor to this with ImageNet, and how the idea that they had in terms of to make there was a chicken and egg story with AI where like you need to have labeling, human labeling of data to make it train, but how do you get that much? If you label that much, then why do you need AI, right, with humans? So one of the things they did was they gave it to Amazon MTurk and like crowdsource the whole thing. But to crowdsource it, you need digital technology. That's why I said it was a precursor, that the internet was a precursor. So it was all part of all the different technologies that came in, different processing power that happened at that time. So everything coming together led to these different breakthroughs that came with ImageNet. And then now with GenAI, the new breakthrough that has come is a new way of thinking about how to do different reasoning tasks, right? But it's all powered by data. And that is the big difference between logic and reasoning and rules versus data. And what we're seeing now is this data-based AI is much more scalable. It's self-learning and it can update by itself. And that's why you're seeing much more interest now. And that's why I don't think it's a hype. And I think it is something that is here to stay.
So, yeah, are there ethical questions in particular that have caught your interest? Because I mean, you mentioned the value chain and sort of all the ethical considerations along it. You and Raj both talked about that. But are there particular questions that have caught your interest?
I mean, I think that there are so many. I think some are more salient or top of mind, I would say, to business leaders or folks studying for an MBA. There are many ethical questions along the way that are tough. But, knowing with anything, with any technology and any evolution, you're taking certain risks in the sense that we know that there's, as Raj described, there's some opportunities now because of the data, because of the infrastructure, because of the technology that we can start, ramping up and scaling up our capabilities really, really quickly on things that we've imagined for decades. But there's questions, what is next, right? What is going to be the impact? And we know some of the impact, but we don't fully know some other aspects of it. And business leaders have to make choices without that full information. And that is very challenging. That's always challenging to make decisions when there's a lot of ambiguity and concern. And so how do you think about the downside? How do you embrace a new Gen AI, let's say, system in your organization, and are thoughtful enough to plan ahead for the potential downsides that your organization might face? And that could be, aspects of your workforce. Like, how do you make sure that your workforce is empowered by this new technology, that feels challenged and excited to embrace it and rewarded for it, and doesn't lose its job and doesn't feel replaced and doesn't feel like it's lost control? These are, it's a different kind of ethical set of considerations, but it's nonetheless the responsibility of a leader to think about it. When your organization is launching a new technology, what are your ethical responsibilities when it pertains to the impact on other companies and on society and on other institutions around you? This is something, again, one of our colleagues here is probably the world's expert in stakeholder theory. Like, this requires you to be thinking about multiple parts of society and multiple different organizations and roles around you in a very proactive way, and play out different scenarios and plan for them and cater for those kind of downside risks. That is an ethical responsibility first and foremost, but it's also the need is there for folks to have the tools to conduct those types of ways of thinking and to execute. We have, of course, questions about exploiting customers and consumers. And, there's always the kind of negative spin on things, which I totally get. The fear for the world being run by machines and medical choices being done by computers and the like. We need to focus on the reasons that we want the upside and how do we protect ourselves from the downside, and be honest about our current status quo as well. Like, what are we actually changing from? Because we know that the world is not totally, carefree right now, or not all decisions that are made today, even without AI, are fully ethical. So we want to hope for a better future, but it is not something that's going to happen by accident. We need to play a key role in it. And so ironically, it's our judgment that is being elevated now in, hand in hand with the additional capabilities from AI. Yeah.
Raj, one of the things that was interesting to me when ChatGPT came out, it was released out to the world, people started using it, and Sam Altman, the leader of OpenAI, was everywhere doing interviews seemingly all the time. Is as he was doing those interviews, he would say something like, well, there's a non-negligible chance that AI could destroy the world. Like, this is one of the things he would say, which I found so fascinating from a communication standpoint, right? This is an incredible technology. Yes. And it's still kind of getting there, so to speak, in some ways, right? But why introduce this other piece where, like, artificial generalized intelligence and this sort of destruction of the world as part of this conversation? I never quite understood that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's a heavy topic, Brett. So where do we begin? So it's at this point, let's just be clear. He's talking about artificial general intelligence. That is not there yet, right? We don't have that yet. And so let's be clear on that. So all this discussion then is hypotheticals, and it's about philosophical discussions about how systems like this could, if there is a general intelligence, what are the implications, right? And I think if you think about it, where philosophers come at this, right, is that, like what Yael was mentioning about humans, and there are decisions that are unethical even without AI that is happening now. So with machines, the good and the bad is it amplifies both the good and it amplifies the bad about humans, right? It makes us super productive in the good things, but also makes us amplifies the negatives too. And that's where we need to be careful. And that's kind of what he's trying to say. So there's this whole paperclip problem. that is a very famous philosophical discussion around AI, right? If you want an AI and you tell the AI to make paper clips, be the best at making paper clips, and do as much paper clips as you can. You can see a scenario where the AI uses all the world's resources and floods the world with paper clips because you didn't tell it. Don't be judicious about using the world's resources, and don't destroy the world while doing paper clips. Right? So that's where it comes from. This idea of the paperclip problem, and what we call the alignment issue is you can just, like, the machine is doing what it's told, but us humans did not guide the machines well, or did not. The AI is not going to think about the other implications of this issue, right? So the bigger challenge with AI and ethical AI is actually understanding humans and how we use, and not the machines. And how do we get the machines to align better with us and use the better side of us and not the bad sides?
Yeah, and I love that, Raj, and it relates to a comment in the Q&A that is really interesting around how ethical and transformative challenges are shaping the adoption of AI. Sometimes there's a real fear of, we think that people prefer human to human interaction. We think that we prefer humans in certain decision-making roles. But when we probe a little bit and learn more about ourselves, to your point, Raj, we learn more about where actually the machines, I would say, or the algorithms or the AI can serve a role that actually might be better for us. And we have some colleagues who do amazing work when it comes to, for instance, giving feedback in the workplace, or monitoring in the workplace, or how supervision gets done. It's not always obvious that we prefer a human in a certain role that we've traditionally had as a human, and maybe there is actually certain circumstances in which machines are preferred, more objective, or less prone to error in certain ways. And so it requires us to think deeply about some of these aspects that I think are non-trivial for sure. And what's interesting about today, I don't think those non-negligible kind of concerns are I don't think that they're not important. I think, the fact that there's a chance of something severe happening is really important. And we've seen that in history in many different innovation related activities, that there is a chance that a big innovation can be catastrophic in its impact, for sure. And it is our job as thought leaders, for sure, but also as thinking humans, to identify ways to protect ourselves. We do this with a lot of other things in our lives. We've done this definitely, when it comes to warfare and the like. We try. We're not quite as there completely, but we try to minimize the chance of catastrophic danger. And now that we know what's being worked on and how things are evolving, the conversations are happening. Like, people knew that eventually machines would improve in their capabilities for many years now. But the conversations around policy and regulation is happening now. We're being pushed to talk about it now. It could have happened 5-10 years ago, but the urgency wasn't there. Now that there's a sense of urgency and people are, it's all coming to life a little, people can feel it, they can kind of smell it, they can see it coming. Now we're having those conversations. And those are important conversations to have. And so it's good in some ways. It's a wake-up call that, okay, let's all come together, leaders around the world, and grapple with these very tough conversations.
Raj, I want to build on what Yael is sharing there, because it's something that I think has been percolating as part of this conversation, right? You're talking a lot about ethical decisions that business leaders will need to make. And there's been this ongoing conversation about whether lawmakers can actually regulate a technology that is changing this fast. You see sort of how social media has developed, for example, have not really been able to get their arms around that. AI is moving so fast. Is regulation possible here? I mean, what might regulation look like? And it'll still allow the industry to grow.
I think, I would say that in privacy, there have been some good regulations that have come in that have put some proper rules in place as to what data you can use and protecting consumer welfare. the way I think about regulations in general is that it creates a trust framework, that regulation is actually good for an economy to thrive. Think about credit card usage in the history, in the old times, right? The countries that had credit card penetration had proper consumer protection bureaus, and places where that were not didn't have these bureaus, you didn't have much credit card usage. And credit is important for an economy to survive. And the same way, as you have more better privacy regulations, consumers will have more trust in interacting with businesses online and have some trust with their data. And I think that is also something which is necessary, right? So I would say for regulations, I would look at privacy regulations, although they're not perfect and they're getting revised, but they're getting there in a way in terms of protecting consumers' data online and having consent and all that. So with social media, I think we are battling this issue of misinformation and also personalization, and how much social media. There are two issues in social media. One is misinformation, one is addiction and mental health issues. And both need different solutions, but I think there are research that is happening now in business schools, in universities, that is affecting regulations, and also with AI. And that's why we learn from our early days of like when online internet came. We just let it be the wild, wild west and didn't think of regulating. And we took a long time to bring in privacy regulations. And there was a lot of societal issues that came up. And we've learned from that, I think. And that's why with AI, people are having this conversation right now. So I'm more optimistic, even with like when GPT was introduced, when GPT 4, I believe, was introduced. There were much more regulations in testing that was done in terms of what it could and would not help with. For example, it was found that it could make a really nice house, like bomb using household materials. And that now it won't help on that. So that was stopped, that it won't help with these things from the product side itself. So I think, as usual, like Europe is leading the way in this, but I think there are some things we can learn from that. And there is AI Bill of Rights even in the US and other countries. So people are starting to do, and I think it's coming up much earlier than it was when you compare with the internet or social media. So that's a good sign. The problem is definitely much more complicated, but we can learn from history, and we can see that people understand that whenever there's this big technology, big disruption, you need to understand the societal implications and have ensure rights of the citizens are protected.
I appreciate that. I want to, in the last 15 minutes that we have here, I want to talk about the thought leadership that's happening at Darden, some of the cases that have been written, and then talk about some of the classes that are also available here. So, yeah, can I come to you? What are some of the things? I mean, obviously, it's difficult to summarize all of it, but some of the things you would want to note here around AI thought leadership that's happening at Darden, some of the research that's taking place.
So, it's always tricky introducing new courses that are built on framework and offer real insight, and not just, let's talk about what's in the popular press. That there is some value in talking about popular press, but our faculty really try to dig deep, both in terms of bringing to the classroom frameworks and generalizable principles that they've studied through their research or through their work with companies. And so finding that balance and being nimble with it is really a challenge for academia in general, not just at Darden. And our faculty have done a tremendously impressive job. We have faculty teaching everything from AI and business, more on the coding side and algorithm side. So if students are really interested in understanding these LLMs and really digging into the technicalities, they can take some of our data science and AI courses that, for instance, Michael Albert offers. One of our colleagues that we talked about her research, Roshni's research, she offers a brand new electives that she started this year around mind and the machines. And that's more about how we as humans flourish in the age of AI. But her work is fascinating, where it becomes to the psychology of, again, how do we interact with machines versus humans? What does it mean for organizational structures? What does it mean for kind of people to people relationships in the organization? And how do you infuse AI in that regard? And she brings a lot of her really important research. She's a thought leader in the space. We have one of our economists offers courses on the future, more at a broad kind of macro level, like the future of work and the implications of AI. He has a joint appointment with the economics department and really brings that kind of broader perspective. I joined, as I mentioned earlier at the call, I taught for the first time this year coding with GPT. We always had, we have had a few coding type courses in product development and digital product development. So we've offered coding before, or software development courses. This time we've offered software development, but we really encouraged and we introduced students to how to do it with the GPT innovations. The type of tools that are out there are just mind-boggling. You can describe what you want a website or an e-commerce site to look like, and there are certain environments that AI will just give you the code within seconds, and you then need to understand it and elevate it. But really, the efficiency gains there and the learning curve is totally changed. And so it's been fascinating to be part of that learning team and teaching team. And by the end of the quarter, our students were demonstrating, they basically had many businesses already launched and run because they could really launch these websites super quick and leverage what GPT is offering. Raj, maybe you can tell, I think you mentioned earlier some of your course that you've offered, but these are just a few examples where each one of us, depending on our area of expertise, is really pushing the needle in terms of what AI has to bring. I'm about to go and teach a class on AI and project planning and project management, which is based on a case that I wrote, and a company that I advise that does this, uses GPT and other generative AIs to plan projects better. So lots of impact on our curriculum.
Raj, do you want to talk a little bit about your classes? Anything that you would want to highlight about?
So the class I teach is on AI in marketing. It's around how AI is affecting marketing, and also how there are classes on how you can build the capability of an organization to be good at AI. So there is individuals who can use AI better, but as a whole organization, as a team, how do you improve in becoming AI first? And what are the objectives of using AI? Where do you deploy it? And how do you where do you begin in this journey? So that's more strategic in terms of how a whole organization can up its game. And so there used to be digital transformation courses. We still have them, but now there is this whole push that is evolution of that into how you build something with AI. And and then there are courses and the AI is getting infused into all our core courses, right? We've had in the core, we teach fundamental concepts, but also using AI, and wherever possible, we are bringing in the new technologies as well, and to teach the fundamental concepts across, like in marketing and finance and DA and ops. All of us are bringing in those aspects as well.
Yeah, how do you keep a class current with these kind of technologies that are changing so fast? I mean, you just pick up the newspaper, and it seems like something new every day.
Every day. It's incredible. Really, it's a challenge. I must admit, we're all challenged by it. I think in the same way that the workforce and the workplace is challenged by it, we are challenged by it as well in academia. I mean, if you think about it, it's always like you imagine faculty design a course and then they kind of teach it, rinse and repeat year after year. Well, we can't do that anymore because, a course that we designed a year ago, this year is already very, very different. And so um, really trying to first be nimble enough and curious enough. We're lucky that our students are partners with us in it, so they feel like because it's a very student-centered learning environment. We need to walk into the class open for them to also teach everybody, not only us. And so having the students who are closer to some, in some cases they're closer to the workforce, they can bring in ideas to the classroom and infusing that. But it also requires us to be curious and to simultaneously think about more generalizable principles. So I'm not just teaching about, okay, how do I use ChatGPT? That's not the level that I want to operate on necessarily, although it's important too. I want to kind of try and extract and give my students tools and skills that they can use even with the next generation. So like, next generation of technology. So like, how do I give them frameworks and questions and capabilities that extend beyond a specific tool? It has to be more broader than that. And that's kind of what we already do to some degree as academics. We try to think about, if I step back, what are the common threads that we see across different technologies or across different use cases? How do we take away some more broader principles? And that's what we try to bring to the table. And that's more stable than the novelty of the day, which is whatever is the current best model out there. Yeah.
Raj, cases form so much of what happens, the basis of what happens here at the Darden School. Are there any cases written around sort of AI or that are in the works that you'd want to highlight here? Just, I think it's always interesting for folks to hear about this end of things because people read them in class, but kind of how do they come to life?
Yes, cases all around. That was fascinating for us as this institute was getting launched. We looked at all around across the faculty group to see case studies that are being built, and it's across all areas, right? So I can talk about like the one I'm doing. I built a case on Flipkart, which is one of India's biggest marketplaces, and how they built AI tool on their app for different languages and for building the voice AI capabilities in their app. And that we use that case to discuss the economics of AI and how you calculate ROI for AI versus other technologies and other options like social media. And so that's one case study where you can think about new ideas coming in, but we're still looking at ROI and economics in there, right? So, and in the core, we looked at how we can use ChatGPT to evaluate different branding campaigns and GenAI to evaluate different branding campaigns. So that's another case study that is getting, that was written and that is getting used as well. As I'm revising my book, I'm looking at different I'm talking to different companies now on their Gen AI journeys and going back to Flipkart and building that out. Where there's a CFA institute here, and they have a journey that we are documenting. And also with Kohler is a big consumer brand, and how they have built their GPT. That is, we are working on documenting them. So there are different things that at least this is just what I'm doing. I know I've seen Yael teach an AI case on project management that is fascinating as well, and I'm sure with the coding with GPT, she has got enough exercises and case studies there that are all around GPT. So I think that's the beauty of and also the thing with this is the students participate in developing many of this, right? Like there is, they can do a course with us, like an independent study, which is where they can work with us on a case study or a tech note that can be something that is of interest to them, and they can explore that deeply. And that could be a course they take, and we would be the guide for that. And at the end of the day, if it's a good enough product, then it's their name is on the case study, and they have an impact on the Darden curriculum forever.
Yeah, one of the things that Raj is sharing here is this connection to actual practitioners. I know this is something you talked a lot about and
Yes.
kind of one of the ways the curriculum stays current. Do you want to talk about sort of the research that faculty do at Darden? Because I think this is a big differentiator.
Yeah, I mean, so first I wanted to, as Raj was describing, and your question prompted me. So the case writing also is an opportunity to stay connected with practice, because we write the cases with practice. Stay connected with our alums, because our alums are very often the ones that are in those companies. And so, for instance, one of the new AI cases that I know that my colleagues in operations wrote was with Arnie Katz, which he graduated 15, 16 years ago, maybe. And he's at GoFundMe, and they've been starting to use AI in very creative ways. And so they wrote a case about GoFundMe. He's also, then opportunity for students to be exposed to the company and maybe apply for jobs there. So there's a whole kind of natural life cycle there. Yeah, the research, we alluded before to the research that, for instance, Roshni is doing, or our colleague Anton is doing. Darden faculty has always been interested in research that is close to practice. So research that is relevant to the practicing manager and not just to other academics. And so we try to write with that in mind. And this work, it's tricky sometimes to study something as new as AI in terms of our research, because it's, research takes a little bit more time. We like to, everything has to be done pretty carefully in terms of like designing studies, if it's collecting empirical data or analyzing the data, or again, coming up with those generalizable principles. And it doesn't feel like we have time. Like if you want to write papers about AI, you need to be doing it now. And so it's requiring a lot of collaboration. Our faculty are working on incredible multidisciplinary projects with many folks from School of Data Science, from engineering, from the medical school. Raj and I were just looking at a bunch of proposals this morning, and just seeing the richness in which people are exploring questions. Okay, some ethical concerns related to generative AI in the healthcare space. Okay, so there's a bunch of questions there that first, our research exposes the questions, proposes ways to investigate it, and proposes ways to study it, and then come up with recommendations. So we see this in so many different ways: moderated content, predicting, illnesses and treatments. Like there's so many different ways in which this work is relevant, and it requires our faculty to be forthcoming and to think broadly beyond just the walls of the business school, but across the various expertise across grounds, but also across research disciplines. So yeah, we see a lot of it, and we were blown away. I think the number that I heard earlier in the fall was over 63 articles that had AI related, and that was like earlier in the fall. So my guess is that that's just increased significantly since then. And remember, there aren't that many of us in the faculty office building, so much is being produced, and it's incredible to see. Yeah.
I want to conclude just by asking kind of what's next for the LaCross Institute. So, Raj, what are you looking forward to? What's the Institute up to in the coming months?
I think, like Yael mentioned, we are in the process of building grants for new research that is interdisciplinary and new. So that's really exciting. Helping the students with their conference in spring, that's something that we are definitely working on. And so those are just near term what is already happening. But what we're really excited about in the next phase is to bring in 4 to 5 focus areas, priority areas, and build faculty, student, alumni working groups on these areas, and really have them chart their own path and journey to explore, and provide them the necessary resources to be as successful as possible. So while the Institute is, it's a broad agenda, we are in the process of finalizing our priorities that we will announce soon, and start building focus areas and people who can then take it to the next level. So I'm really excited about that, to get people to, give them all the resources they can to be as successful as they are, and get smart people together. Then you always get good things out of it.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground here. So for folks who want to learn a little bit more about AI, any potential next about AI at Darden specifically, any next steps that you'd recommend, anything you would encourage them? to seek
Yeah,
out?
first, take a look at the LaCrosse webpage. I'm expecting 170. Well, we had 200 people. I'm expecting 200 LinkedIn messages, right, to connect. Stay in touch with us. So connect with Raj, with myself, with the Darden School or the LaCrosse Institute, so that it's easy to communicate and to kind of stay in touch, and share with us what you're thinking about, you're working about, the questions that you have on your mind. We always like to collaborate, and there's no better way to do that than with folks that are already kind of interested in being part of the Darden community. And so, I look forward to hearing from many folks here online.
Well, Yael, Raj, thank you so much for being here. It's such a great conversation. We covered a lot of ground. As always, we're recording this conversation. It'll show up on our Vimeo channel, so you can watch the recording there. And we'll also share out the audio from the conversation on our Admissions podcast, Experience Darden, and the Exec MBA podcast. I want to give a quick plug. This is a month of sort of initiatives that we're spotlighting here at the Darden School. Last week, obviously, we talked about the Mayo Center and some of the asset management related initiatives. Today was all about artificial intelligence and what's happening with LaCrosse Institute here at the Darden School. And we'll wrap up our January focus on initiatives with office hours focused on the healthcare initiative. We'll have a couple faculty members joining us for that. So it'll be next Thursday. Join us for that conversation. And as always, we'll have a recording available, as mentioned, on Vimeo as well as our podcast. So thank you, Yael and Raj, and thank you to our attendees for being here today. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, everybody.
And that was my conversation with Yael Grushka-Kane and Raj Venkatesan, the academic directors for the LaCrosse AI Institute here at the Darden School of Business. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, or questions you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.